Chapter 20. Baba's Samsara. The term samsara is used by almost every Hindu and is supposed to be fairly understood. Samsarati is the derivation of the word. Samsara is that which perfectly cycles round and round. The world of births and deaths for each jiva is denoted by the term samsara. The generally accepted idea of life from birth to death is that it is predominantly overladen with sorrow, and therefore it is the common desire of persons to escape samsara, that is, to escape a very large round of sorrows in birth after birth. The question might be raised why stress should be laid upon the sorrows of life, when in point of fact, if we examine honestly the life of any person or creature known to us, the predominant part of each life is joy or happiness. It is not correct to say that any body or child or any other person that we see is for the major portion of the day in mourning and in gloom. Life has been so arranged that the proper fulfillment of every function necessary for the maintenance and growth of the organism is attended with a feeling of pleasure. Pleasure is the index to the person or jiva that it is properly functioning and guides it to the correct course, which will enable it to maintain itself, prolong its existence, and reproduce its kind, and thereby ensure the continuance of its species. So Providence seems to have dowered animal existence with abundance of joys. There is joy in eating, in sleeping, and in resting. There is joy in working, and joy in almost everything that we can mention. Yet it is the human tendency to emphasize that which is painful. And there are undoubtedly pains, especially in the case of some people, either on account of their inability to find out how to manage their conduct in life, or on account of the extraneous circumstances. There might be a preponderance of pain, and that for some periods, for special reasons in the lives of a good number. This appears to be the basis of pessimistic dicta in the sastras, which says that life is full of sorrow. As the scripture states, having come into this ephemeral existence which is unhappy, worship me, or God. This is the saying of Sri Krishna to Arjuna in the Gita, and may warrant, in the view of some, the conclusion that life in the world means sorrow. But having reference to the principle that every statement should be referred to the context and the circumstances in which it is made, we see undoubtedly a very good justification for Sri Krishna telling Arjuna that life is unhappy, because the whole Gita begins with Arjuna's deploring his wretched lot. He said, "Whichever way I turn, I find only sin, sorrow, and trouble, and I do not find happiness. Whether we win or lose this battle, that is equally a painful event." It is in that plight, when he could see no gleam of light in his situation, that Arjuna surrendered to Sri Krishna and said, "Please order me to do what to do. I am unable to see any course that will lead to happiness." To Arjuna, at the time of the Gita, life was full of prospect of pain, and therefore the statement that life is painful was correct in the circumstances in which it was made. But if we take any child who is romping and playing about practically all the hours of the day, and having 10 or 12 hours of happy sleep, and say that its life is painful or unhappy, That would not be correct. But all this apart, we may note in what sense the word unhappy is used in the sastras. In the sastras, they say that everything is either happiness or unhappiness compared with the ideal of peace. Depending on sense enjoyments is or leads to unhappiness. Happiness is raising oneself above the ruffling caused by pain and pleasure, so it says in one of the scriptures. And it also notes, desire is the cause of the greatest unhappiness. Freedom from desire is the cause of the greatest happiness. So the ideal state is that of Brahman, which is pure unalloyed bliss and perpetual bliss, as the absolute pure consciousness. Tables of happiness are given there in which the quality and duration of various joys are arranged, beginning with the unit, a human or royal bachelor's happiness, and proceeding in that way. The last in the table is said to be Brahma, that is, the four-faced Creator's happiness. That may be suggestive of the happiness of God, which is Sat Chit Ananda, or existence consciousness bliss. It is a multiple of human happiness by a number which is hardly imaginable. And every sort of happiness, including that of Brahman, is said to be enjoyed by the knower of the Vedas, the realizer of Brahman as God, who has conquered desire. It is this desire which runs through life that consequently renders, according to Upanishads and other scriptures, life of misery and sorrow. Now we may go back to the question as to what samsara is. We find that Nana Sahib Chandokar on one occasion told Baba, "Baba, I do not like this samsara. I do not even want to touch it with a pair of tongs. Please let me get rid of samsara." This is similar to a lady's statement to Baba that he should be pleased to enable her to escape from samsara, that is, the round of births and deaths. To both, Baba gave the answer which is suggestive of the fact that these two questioners were laying undue emphasis on the sentimental sorrows of life and the powerlessness of human being to escape the miseries of life or the implied effects of life. To that lady, Baba said, "Have you come to die?" Because samsara means round of births and deaths, the lady was startled and then asked Baba what he meant. Baba asked her to think who she was. That is, ordered her to make the inquiry, "Who am I?" That is, he asked her to make Atma Vichara. Her husband explained to her that Atma Vichara would lead her to the conclusion that her idea that she was a separate individual or jiva and not the universal soul or God was incorrect, that she should constantly identify herself more and more with Sat Chit Ananda and merge in it, and that was the only escape from samsara. That is, if we are the Supreme Being above all creation, maintenance, and withdrawal, then there is no samsara for us. Otherwise, there is samsara. That seems to have been the teaching to that lady. To Nana Chandokar, Baba went into more details and gave him the answer that samsara, that is, the perpetual cycle of births and deaths, is the result of the law of karma. As long as there is the body, which is the result of prarabdha karma, one cannot escape going through the results of previous karma. So merely running away to a forest or leaving the family will not enable one to escape the series of events which must make up the present life. Baba said that even he himself was not free from samsara, saying, as long as there is the body, there must be samsara. Now we shall go into the question about Baba's samsara in connection with Baba's body. Baba's body had previous existence in previous states and lives, and Baba has given various accounts of himself in previous times and his connections with his bhaktas in previous lifetimes, with some even for 72 lifetimes, or over 10,000 years. So Baba declared that samsara was binding him also. Now, in a sense, that is obviously true. But still there is the counsel which Baba himself gives that one must behave properly in samsara, and thus escape the effects of samsara. That is, samsara need not be painful if one acts properly. One may escape trouble, sorrow, and difficulties, and thus lead a life of asanga, which is prescribed by the sastras for escaping samsara. The sastras order everyone to worship God in any form, and thus get identified with God and lose oneself in God. As the Bhagavad Gita puts it, by bhakti or devotion, one knows me, what I am, and to what extent, that is, in what forms. I am truly, and then, having known me truly, he enters into me, that is, merges in me, Atman, or becomes part of me. So samsara is a necessity for a soul that recognizes itself as a jiva, or has a sense of individuality or separation. The jiva may realize itself ultimately as God, as Sai Baba did. Then it is identical with Param Atman, or the Supreme Self, sometimes known as Aham Brahmasmi, I am Brahman. The Supreme that is bound by the I am the body idea is the jiva. The Supreme without that idea is the Param Atman. Therefore, according to one's modes of being, a jiva or not a jiva, one is in samsara or out of it. In the Srimad Bhagavata, Sri Krishna says that ideas of bondage and moksha are merely mental concepts, and that in reality there is no bondage or liberation. That is, when one reaches the state of Krishna or Para Brahman, even beyond the absolute consciousness, there is no notion of liberation or bondage. One fact has been mentioned above, namely that treating various states of pleasure in life as important parts of one's life, life may be viewed on the whole as a mass of happiness, preponderantly happy. And to meet this view, Srimad Bhagavata says, let alone human happiness, even the happiness enjoyed by the gods and the various worlds is ephemeral. Even the fourth-faced God has to end his life at the fixed time. Kala, or time, is to destroy even that Brahma, and therefore all the joys of all the persons, celestial or human, are treated by comparison with Sat-Chit Ananda as misery. It is only by our merging in Sat-Chit Ananda that we get free from this state of misery. This is found in the Srimad Bhagavata. Hence, one thing is clear, that is, the course of one's conduct must be to get farther and farther away from the I am the body idea. That is, the narrow notion of oneself as body, and expand oneself farther and farther so that one may realize that one is the soul of all creatures. Baba had achieved that position, and he declared that he was the soul of all creatures. He was coaching up his best disciples to view him as the soul of all themselves and of all others, and gradually to deem themselves also as that, just as Baba. By constantly thinking of Baba as the all in all, the devotee becomes that. This is, in effect, the highest coaching that we find both in the Bhagavata and in Sai Baba's teaching. Baba, in giving advice to Chandokar, gave him practical directions and details as to the rules of morality that he had to follow, and other precepts, taking him on higher and higher in the scale of happiness. It is the exclusion of others from the self that is the source of misery. It is the inclusion of more and more of the excluded set so as to make it part of one's life that is the way to happiness. In this program, moral rules such as gratitude and love play an important part. Gratitude and admiration take us out of our narrow selves, and love binds us to the object of love. There is a narrow sort of love in one saying, I love my child and will beat anyone who interferes with my child. This contains the germ of the crude principle of love, but has also much dross which hides and taints that crude principle. Ordinarily, in human circumstances, with people's narrow views of themselves as bodies or body-bound souls, love of one excludes love of others. But the correct view of the soul, that is, as spirit unattached, will enable one to see that love of one need not and should not exclude others. Love of one should be the love of all. If our center be the body as self, as understood by ordinary beings, persons farther and farther away from the body self are thrown out of it and will not be loved. But if, in imitation of great souls like Sai Baba, we fix our center not in one place or one body, but in all places, then we shall have a figure for our soul with center everywhere and circumference nowhere. As it states in one of the scriptures, petty minds discriminate between their own and strangers. High souls view the entire world as their kin. In this connection, one may note the Maya theory that has been referred to in the Srimad Bhagavata and in Baba's teaching. In Baba's teaching, the word Maya is clearly indicative of darkness. That is, what binds one to darkness is Maya. It covers up our consciousness and knowledge and creates fictions over the actuality of life. It is an illusion. For example, a person who is a coolie dreams that he is a king, forgets his coolieship and assumes kingship, and the whole thing is a miserable fiction. Therefore, Maya does exist and is a thing to be avoided. But Maya has another sense, namely that it is the creative power of God. Even in this sense, it creates fictions and makes the world run on the basis of those fictions. But the conclusion drawn and acted upon by some people that everything in this phenomenal world is fiction is not to be accepted as its logical conclusion. Baba said, no doubt, that Maya is a covering over the consciousness, but he did not follow it to the logical conclusion that everything that is seen is merely a fiction and therefore to be disregarded. As long as we are in this phenomenal world with its rules and principles, we have to follow it. Therefore, Baba gave many directions to his disciples and never treated his relations to the disciples as mere fictions. He was a realist, quite as much as any other that we have seen, and he asked people to stick to truth. The truth understood in the phenomenal sense, and not in the sense of Advaitic philosophy, that is, a reality which is not sensed, but is merely conceived of in philosophy as beyond all time and space. Baba gave advice to Chandokar as to how to behave in society. Baba himself behaved excellently in respect of every relation in society. What are the ties of Baba, and what were the ties also of Baba in previous lifetimes? And what would be his ties in the future? Baba recognized in his accounts of previous births and of the present one that he had parents and that he had to help and support his mother or father and brothers and sisters. He recognized that sisters of his former births gave him support and took birth in this life again to continue the support. Tacha Patil's mother, Bayaji Bai, was a sister of his previous birth, and by that strong tie she took immense pain to see him fed, especially in his young nomadic days at Shirdi, when he used to wander into the jungles, not caring for food. She would run into those jungles and feed Baba wherever he might be. From the beginning of his life, this sister made it certain that he would have his food and not starve. For such a provision, one must be indeed highly grateful, and Baba was grateful. Baba could never forget even the slightest offices done to him. On one occasion, when he climbed up a house and wanted to descend, and a ladder was brought to him, he paid 2 rupees to the man who brought the ladder, saying that services should not be accepted gratis. Similarly, when a Muslim applicant for dynamite, who had been twice improperly refused license by the collector, came to Baba for his intercession, Baba told Chandokar that he, Chandokar, must help that applicant with a license for dynamite for deepening his well. Baba said, "This time let him present the application to the collector, and the collector will grant the license. This man has left a box with us, and it is not proper for us to say so. No, when he asks for its return." Chandokar explained that statement to mean that applicant had done in a former birth some good service to Baba, or to him, Chandokar, or to both Baba and Chandokar, and out of gratitude he must be helped on this occasion. When Baba was so full of gratitude, even for such slight services, he would be the last person to forget a lifelong support for food, such as offered to him by Bayaji Bai. He never forgot it. In addition to that, her son Tacha Patil was attending upon him at the mosque and spent his nights for many long years with Baba, serving Baba and sleeping with Baba. Baba, remembering all this, was very affectionate towards Tacha. Tacha would call Baba Mama, that is, maternal uncle, and Baba would refer to Tacha as Punta, or nephew. Baba would not get up from his bed till Tacha came up and lifted him and lit up his pipe for him to smoke. He was watching over all devotees, no doubt, but especially over Tacha, and he gave him frequent advice based upon his own superior knowledge. When there was the danger of his valuable horse getting damaged by a journey, Baba warned him. Tacha did not mind the warning and went on the journey and nearly lost his horse. Similarly, on other occasions, Baba gave him the use of his supersensual knowledge. But what people mostly judge by is the extent to which one gives them worldly goods. Baba gave plenty of the world's goods to Tacha. During the last years when Baba was getting a provincial governor's income, Tacha was daily paid a fixed sum on which income tax was levied. With his funds, Tacha was able to build 3-storied houses for himself and purchase lands also. He grew rich and respectable and was looked up to as a person who was the pet of Baba. It is even said that in 1918, when Baba said that Tacha would die, Tacha was saved. Some people believe that Baba gave up his own life in order to save Tacha's life. A dictum in the Srimad Bhagavata is, "If one does not save the life of a person in peril of death, he is unfit to be called a guru." Baba has said that he would sacrifice his own life for his bhaktas who concentrate their affection on him. This certainly applied to Tacha. Baba's concern for Tacha Patil's family did not stop with mere provision of funds. Unfortunately, amongst the Patil's families, all of whom were devoted to Baba, there were divisions and factions. Baba was watching over them. On one occasion in the mosque, he suddenly said, "Don't beat, don't beat." When Kapardi's son asked Baba why he said so, Baba explained that in the quarrels between the Patils, there was imminent danger of clash, and to prevent it, he said, "Don't beat, don't beat." That is how Baba has been safeguarding and helping Tacha and his people. He helped Tacha in his criminal appeal against the conviction and sentence of Raghu and others. In so many other ways also, Baba has helped Tacha. So it is clear that Baba recognized the bonds of kinship with Tacha as binding on him and exercised all his powers for his benefit. He has rendered similar help to a number of others. These ties of kinship are called by a special name, and Baba has stated that this has to be respected. It's its ties to kinship in past births and in the present. Baba stated his kinship to Kondaji and Karpati and others. He recognized Guru Bandhutva, that is, being under the same master, as a powerful bond or tie. Once he said that Dada Kelkar and Karpati, as well as Sahib Jog and Dixit and Shama, were all with Baba under one common guru in a previous birth, and therefore he had brought them together in this life so that they might renew their contact. He helped each of the above in a very remarkable degree, as set out fully in other chapters of this book. To Upasani Baba also he revealed the fact that the ancestors of Shirdi Sai Baba and Upasani Baba were for centuries closely connected, and in consequence Baba was under a very heavy obligation to help Upasani, to lever him up, so to speak. Baba said to Balakrishna Sastri, that is Upasani's brother, "There was a tree or a log of wood. There were 2 on it, evidently 1 at each, and by pressing oneself down, the other would be levered up. One of these went down and the other went up." Upasani explained this to mean that it was something like a seesaw and that Baba had levered up Upasani in this way. That is, by his powers, Baba had raised the spiritual level and happiness of Upasani, vesting him also with considerable powers. Baba recognized even playmates and said he found at a particular tomb that a guru who had been a playmate of his was dead and buried in a tomb, and he found her haunting that tomb. So Baba went there and remained there a little while, and afterwards took her with him and brought her to a babul tree at Shirdi and kept her there, evidently for further spiritual elevation of her soul. Baba recognized this even in animals. in the present or past, and Mrs. Karpati was once a cow that gave him plenty of milk. And on account of that, she, after becoming human and the daughter of a gardener, was levered up into a rich family, and finally into a Brahmin family. In all her previous births, she renewed her contact with Baba and gave him food. Baba in turn helped her, and in this birth, Baba gave her the Rama mantra. He not only massaged her, but asked her to repeat Raja Ram, Raja Ram, as that would ensure her Sadgati. Baba recognized 2 goats as having been his former human companions, who by their misfortune had been degraded to the level of animals. He bought those goats and fed them. He recognized a snake and a frog as his former human companions, who had the benefit of his company in a previous birth. He had made promises to Channa Basappa that he would save him from his enemy, when actually the enemy was born to continue his hatred and revenge as a snake and had gripped the frog that Basappa had turned into. Baba was there in time to keep his word and save Basappa, that is, the frog, from being swallowed by the snake. Baba also recognized a certain kinship among saints. Some people say that there is a group that is of 5 saints, which Baba was one. We find reference to the fact that Baba appeared to one of his devotees and said that he was one of the 9 gems in which Datta had turned himself in modern days. These saints sent up several of their disciples to Baba, and they were recognized by Baba as coming from a saintly brother. References to these are to be found in other chapters in this book. Many other saints were recognized by Baba as his spiritual companion or helper and were sending their men on to Baba. These are his contacts in the present lifetime. But these do not exhaust the question of Baba and the promises that have been made. For instance, Baba said in this lifetime to Mr. Reggae that when Reggae takes birth, he also would be born to keep company with him. To the young gentleman of Bandra, Master T, Baba said that he would have 3 more births and that he would be with him for those 3 births, just as he had already been with him many previous births. It is the duty of the Guru to follow the disciple birth after birth. And Baba said, I will account to God for every pi he has given to me. Baba said that it was his duty to take his disciple to God and not to leave him in the middle. When Baba makes a promise, he keeps it, just as Rama does when he said to Sita, once I made a promise, I will keep up that promise. I would rather give up my life, yourself and Lakshman, than give up my plighted word, especially when it has been plighted to Brahmins. That is why Baba's rebirth is looked for by several people. That would be samsara of Baba, to fulfill his promises of rebirth. Baba is not one who is afraid of rebirth. It is only one that has attachment to earthly objects that is to be afraid of rebirth. If one wishes to carry out his promise and takes birth merely for carrying out promises with detachment, keeping himself in the aham brahmasmi state, fully realized as Brahman, that is, without detriment to his soul realization, there is nothing to regret. That is not samsara to regret.